All right, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Video Game Collectors on Call. I'm Dr. Gamer Retro. We've got Ryan here with us, who is a video game collector. Thanks for coming in, Ryan.
Of
So,
course, yeah, I'm really glad to
so,
be here, man.
so the first, on Instagram, your name is listed as wavecapspaper. Tell me about that. What is wavecapspaper?
Sure. So last Christmas, actually, I was doing some thinking about what sort of gifts to get my family members, and my brother and I grew up playing video games. We love playing video games competitively and casually for our whole lives. So I thought it'd be nice to make some old like magazine cutouts, pretty much do a collage, kind of edit it, fine tune it, make a big 8 panel poster of Dark Souls from the first ever magazine print out of PC Gamer. So
That's
I
a
got
tough
it.
game.
It
It's a
is.
tough
It's
game.
tough, man. I'm not a big Souls guy, but we can get into that later. So I made this thing in like GIMP. It took me like hours because I'd never done it before, and I got it printed from this company on like a nice photo paper. It was about 3 foot by 2 foot, so a pretty big poster. I had it framed, and I gave it to him, and he was like, "This is the best gift I've ever gotten in my life, and you need to do this more." And I was like, "Okay, sure." So my wife gave birth to our first child like right before Christmas last year. So I had some time off, so I decided to, while holding the baby on the couch in the morning from like 8 a.m. until 11 a.m., like while she was sleeping and my wife was getting rest, I was just on my computer just finding anything that I could from like late 90s, early 2000s magazines and just trying to make art with it pretty much, make collage art. So I had like, I probably did 400 or 500 different designs that I saved in my desktop in that like 2 or 3 month period. And so periodically I just will put one up. I started with Etsy and I started putting stuff up on Etsy. I didn't expect to get anything out of it. And then all of a sudden, like before I knew it, we're at like 100 sales, and I was like, I don't know what's happening. So I made an
That's awesome.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it kind of went that way. I've taken like a backseat from it for now because now I'm getting into actually collecting the games that I'm making the art for because
There
that
you
is
go.
what sparked my desire to get
Yeah.
back into retro gaming was looking at all these
There
magazines.
you go.
So I'll give
Yeah.
you an example actually. It's funny. Let me reach over and grab this. Where is it? I just had it. It is somewhere. Here it is. Sorry for my fanny pack.
No, that's all right.
I'm a big fanny pack guy.
Back in style, man.
For instance, like something like this, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like a Diablo 2 Ultimate Strategy Guide. So I would like flip through that, make something out of it, got me inspired, so here I am.
So are you cutting pieces out of the actual strategy guide and putting them in place, or are you
So
making copies?
yeah, making scans, and then that's sort of why I'm kind of getting out of it a little bit because I recognize that there is a gray area there of IP because it's been out of
Sure.
circulation for 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't want to step on any toes or steal anybody's content. So
Yeah.
I decided to
Yeah.
kind of put that on the back burner and sort of use the website as a landing page for now because we plan on getting into trading and buy sell of video games and cards very soon. That's a little bit my backstory, but I'm interested to hear about yours because you mentioned that you're a doctor, you're a surgeon.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yep, I am a doctor and a gamer, absolutely. Really didn't have a lot of time for video games when I was in residency and even medical school, but I did, play a few here and there. Didn't have a lot of money either, to be honest with you, on a resident salary. But once I graduated, got my job, started to see all this nostalgia and was like, I want to relive my childhood again. So started, probably a year ago now, because I've graduated residency. It's been a little over a year, maybe a year and a half now. So for a year or so, I've started collecting, and really what I like collecting is anything that has like a good story to it. And I'll post like these not for resale games. Those are the games that you saw like in in Walmart or the electronics store that they allowed you to play.
Yeah,
So,
I have one right now.
that's
I just picked it up the other
yeah.
day. It's funny you mentioned
Which
that.
which
I'll
which
show
one do you
you.
have? Yeah.
I just picked up the Tony Hawk Shred, not for resale.
Oh, okay.
So I'm stoked about that. I mean, I'm sure you could buy it somewhere. Of course, they made a copy for you to buy, but so
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking about the ones that are like displays that they jack in the actual controllers and
yeah,
like tube it up and stuff. That's
yeah,
cool, man.
yeah. So that's kind of I just like the history around it and the nostalgia and kind of like-minded people. I like to meet new people that are collecting and kind of talk about it.
It's the best
So
thing in the world. Yeah.
yeah. So when did the transition occur from I'm gonna make these gifts for people and things, and then now I'm going to start collecting games. How long have you been doing that?
So I probably started. My wife would know better than me, to be honest. I'm all over the place, but I probably started right after my brother told me that he loved his gift. So pretty much like last Christmas. So it's probably been a year. I grabbed a
Okay.
PS2 off of Facebook Marketplace, got some controllers, found somebody offloading like a sleeve of loose PC or sorry PS2 games, and I just started playing and I went from that to Xbox 360 and then to Wii, and now I'm getting into cards. And I mean, I'm a big fan of, like I showed you, the Diablo series. That's like peak nostalgia for me. So
Yeah.
when it came to PS2, it was like Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance 2, games like top down dungeon crawler looters, similar to Diablo, because I wanted to relive that experience that I had as a kid playing those PC games, but I don't have a PC right now because, I just have a Steam Deck because I have two young kids. So
Right.
I figured PS2 would be the way to go, get a wireless controller third party and just sit on the couch and play some good games.
No, that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
man. So
Yeah, I don't collect anything really newer than PS2, I would say. So I have some Xbox. I mean, I have an Xbox One and I have a Switch and all that. I just play those, but I don't really necessarily collect those games. Those are just, I see a game I want to play and I just buy it. I don't consider them part of my collection, as you would call it, I guess.
so you would say your
So,
collection is more focused on pre-2000. We're talking like
yeah.
80s
Yeah.
and 80s, like NES, like
Yeah.
what else would be like Genesis, like
Yeah,
that sort of stuff?
so PS1 and PS2, then there's Dreamcast, Sega Genesis, Sega CD, then NES and SNES, of course, Nintendo 64 and GameCube. And I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to look around the room. I think that's it. I mean,
So what
Sega
is
Saturn.
your
I forgot about
okay?
Sega Saturn. Yeah.
So let's talk about what your primary focus is, if you have any. Like, what's your largest collection for a certain platform?
Probably, it's pretty even on Super Nintendo and PS1. But so
Nice.
I will buy. I know some people collect, right, and they'll buy a game just to have it in their collection, and they don't play all their games. I buy it with the intent of I want to play it, or I did play it and I don't have it anymore, and it was a good game, and I just want to be able to play it again. So I have people that are friends that I know that collect, and they'll have a lot of games where I'll be like, oh, what'd you think of? Oh, I never played it, and I'm like, well, what do you mean you didn't play it? So
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I understand that some people just want to have the volume. They want an actual physical library, sort of like a Blockbuster, which I get.
yeah,
You're not going to play
yeah,
every game in a Blockbuster. It makes sense. But I'm with you. The ones that I hang on to that I don't try and trade or sell to get more games that I like are the ones that I have either played or want to play. So think
yeah.
like anything like top-down RPG for me. I love some sentimental stuff,
Hmm.
Anything that I posted to my Instagram, I probably am keeping. Like that's
Yeah.
basically sort of my SOP. So
So, in regards to that, my, next question, what do you think about grading games? I know we've talked about it a little
that's
bit ourselves,
so
but
funny
what do
that
you think?
you brought that
Yeah.
up. So I don't know. Um, I think if you're gonna have a sealed collection and you're never gonna play it, I don't understand why you get up in arms about grading it. So I can understand why people don't like the idea of graded games because it's inflating the value of a game. But the way I see it is if you have the disposable income and you want to display your game in a nice clean way on your mantle, maybe in like your den, and it's just like a mantelpiece, like I don't see the harm in grading like a Super Monkey Ball or something if you want to just have
Yeah.
it. Like I
I've
get
seen,
that.
yeah, just like cartridges, like NES cartridges of games that aren't even rare, people go out and grade, and I think that's a
Sure,
little
and
much. Yeah.
and I agree. Like you can kind of look at the graded game market and see that some games I know a lot about it, but I've never done it myself. Like you could, for instance, you could grade, I don't know, something like let's just say Dragon Ball Z Budokai 1 on PS2. You could get it graded and it might inflate the value by like $20, but you're paying $60 to grade it. So that's
Yeah.
obviously something that somebody's grading. just to keep it because they loved that game as a kid. But then there's some games that are a little bit different where it may be worth $30 sealed and then you grade it and it is now worth $200. And it's like, that is where I think you get into the weirdness of it, where it's sort of like Pokemon cards, where now we're not talking about appreciating something and having the nostalgia. We're talking about somebody who's just trying to jack up the prices and make a profit. And so I think there's definitely two sides to it. I don't think I particularly have a stance one way or the other, honestly. I know it's a bit of a non-answer, but I think it just depends on person to person and intention. I think intention really matters. So what's your take?
No, I agree with you a little bit. I think that, if you're grading like an NES cartridge for a non-rare game, that seems a little silly to me. But a lot of times, at least for me as a collector, if I see a sealed game that's not graded and I see a sealed game that is graded, it kind of helps me decide, okay, it's not a fake. Because people are getting so good at, making these fake seals and especially in the like PlayStation and the disc sort of games, you can fake those pretty well.
That's so interesting that you bring that up. I was just at a guy's house who I was doing a trade with 2 or 3 days ago. It's the day before Thanksgiving. I don't even know what day it is. It's crazy here with kids. I consider him a friend now. He's such a cool guy, but let me get to the point. I was showing him I had a copy of Gears of War that he was really interested in, and I wanted to get like a PC game from him. So I showed him the Gears of War copy. He pops it open, and he was like, "What is this foil around the center of the disc?" And I was like, "Now that you mention it, I have no idea." And we looked at it for a bit. We did some quick, searching, and we were like, we really don't know what this is. And I was like, I think this actually might be a repro. Like, and I didn't even know it. And I got this from a local game store. And so he was like, I was like, you know what? I'll leave it with you. I'm not going to take anything. I'll take a hike. You do some research and let me know. And he actually came back to me this morning and was like, I know what it was. It wasn't a repro. It's that this was a game at like a Blockbuster or something at one point, and they actually put a foil over it with the branding, and over time it just decayed. So
Interesting.
if you were to like scrape that foil up, you probably would see the Xbox 360 logo underneath it, but he's not going to because he doesn't want to damage the disc, which makes sense. But see that, and I get that. Like, if you're more worried about authenticity, I think CGC or WADA, I guess. I don't know much about them. I just know they do grade games. Like, I think that would be a valid thing. But if you're trying to chase, like, I guess the difference between a 9.8 and a 10 is like, or a 9.6 and a 9.8, it's like, it doesn't make sense to me, right? At least with PSA or Beckett, when you're grading cards, there's a clear delineation between what is gradable and then what is a 1 and then what is a 10. And so I have cards at PSA right now that I'm getting graded, and I'll know that when I get it back, I will know for certain what that means. And that'll mean something, and that holds weight, but I don't know if that exists for video game grading. I think it's more about, like you said, validation that it is authentic and for preservation. I don't think the number means anything.
Right, yeah. So, like, as an example, I just got this that I ordered that I'm going to post later. And this is,
Wow.
I don't know if you're familiar with this cover.
I'm not.
This is Splinter Cell. Sorry, Siphon Filter.
Yeah.
This is Siphon Filter 3. And it came out in 2001. It came out right before 9/11 happened. And they had that cover, which had, kind of like this gas on the front. It was like a terrorist attack. And so...
God.
And so what they said is...
That's not funny. Like, I shouldn't laugh at that, but that is...
Well, no, but
ironic.
yeah, they kind of... Yeah, and so they're like, we got to take all these back, right? We can't sell this game. So if you look for Siphon Filter 3, most of the copies you find will have a different cover on the front because they redid it. But some of these still made it out, right? And the other interesting thing is on the back, what they did is they hole punched a lot of UPCs, okay? So that people who worked in the stores couldn't sell them or whatever. But this one is not hole punched. So it's even more rare. So that's, something like this... I think definitely grading it kind of adds value and authenticity.
Yeah, so for me, that sounds sort of like the equivalent of having like a misprint on a card and getting it graded as a misprint. Because it's like, that's a rare thing. It's a unique thing. It makes sense. You want that preserved. But in terms of somebody sending in a sealed copy of US SOCOM 1 greatest hits like I have, right?
Who would do that?
Sealed.
Who would ever
do
that?
Why would you do that? Like, I don't know. I mean, I thought about it and I was like, why am I taking the value of a sealed game that's $5 and trying to get it up to $75?
Yeah,
Like, what
yeah,
is that going to do for me? Like, it's not like I'm gonna shooting for a 10. It's not like this game. It's not like I even played this game growing up. Like, it's just something that I got into when I was an adult. So,
right.
yeah, it's definitely a gray area, and I see a lot of people who post graded games and they look nice. Don't get me wrong, I'd love a copy of the original Halo Combat Evolved for PC graded on my mantle. That would be killer. But I'm not gonna go and do it and
It's
spend the $60 probably.
funny you say that because I also just acquired off of eBay a sealed Halo for Xbox 360 that is sealed and graded.
And
So
is that
that should,
the original Halo?
the original, yeah. So that
They
should
I
be
didn't
coming
even so
soon.
they made original Halo Combat Evolved for 360 and Xbox.
Sorry, Xbox. Sorry, not
So okay,
360.
okay,
Sorry,
I
sorry,
got you.
sorry.
I was confused. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
whoa, that's actually crazy.
No, sorry.
No,
I thought you
that's
said
cool,
PC
man.
for a second. Yeah,
No, that's funny. I saw that I saw somebody post somebody I follow on Instagram posted a
yeah,
sealed copy of Halo for Xbox, and I was like,
yeah.
that's sick. Like that's sick.
So speaking of getting your collection, you did mention like the game store. You got the one game, the Gears of War at. So where is there? Do you typically go to stores in town? Do you get on eBay? What's your typical way to get your collection?
Sure. So at first I just went on eBay just to get games because I didn't know what there was around me. And I was just at home all the time with my kids, so I was like, it was convenient to have somebody just drop it off, like have the mailman come and bring me my games. So I did do a couple purchases on eBay, but when they showed up, it was like 50-50 on whether or not they would even work, you know. So it was really hard to trust the validity of certain sellers on eBay. So I try and now kind of steer clear. I primarily go to local game stores near me. So there's two that I go to for video games. One is called Old School, and then one is called Video Game Heaven, and they're located in Virginia Beach, roughly. So I'll go there, and then I go to some other card game stores around me, like Atlantis and Tower of Games and stuff like that. But a lot of what I get is actually off Facebook Marketplace because at least I feel like I trust it more. Like somebody's got
Yeah.
their name behind it, and I can kind of do some investigating to see if this is like a real person. And I've liked that. What about you? Where do you normally get your games from?
Yeah, eBay is a big one for me. If they don't have enough, like if it's a expensive cartridge game, I'll ask them to open it up and show me a picture of the board just to verify that it is real. And then I think I had mentioned before I like to travel a lot. So whenever my wife and I travel, much to her displeasure, I go to video game stores in town and just kind of meet new
Yeah.
people, get some new games. So that's been really fun. But I will say you can get ripped off anywhere, man. I mean, you say on eBay, it's hard to say, but even I've bought some games from like a store, a physical brick and mortar store, and I brought it home and it hasn't worked.
Happened to me
Or
too. And I mean, I bought a copy of Rogue Galaxy for PS2 back in my hometown when I was on Christmas break, actually, like last year, like right after I started getting into it. I was like, I'm going to go ahead and go to a game store. Got the
yeah,
copy and I looked at it and I was like, this seems a little scratched. They're like, no worries, it's totally fine. It works. Otherwise, it wouldn't be out here. And then they resurfaced it for me as well. Completely didn't work. And so you're totally right. But on the topic of traveling around, do you ever go to any like conventions or anything like that for gaming?
so I've been to one. I went to a video game convention in Austin. And actually, believe it or not, that's where I got ripped off.
No way, at a
Yeah,
convention.
yeah. So this guy was selling games. He seemed like a cool guy. I bought like three or four games. All but one ended up working, and it was a pretty expensive game. It was the Death and Return of Superman for Sega Genesis. It was complete in box, and brought it home and put it in, and it ended up not working. And so for me, that's like, well, how am I supposed to return it to this guy? Because he was just at a convention. So that kind of
Yeah, that's
sucked. But
brutal because that
yeah,
bad boy, you got it complete in box.
yeah.
Probably
So
about 100, right? That's
yeah, yeah. I think it was a little bit more than that, but yeah.
oof.
So that one, and then I actually am pretty stoked because I recently got tickets to Comic Con in San Diego, which will
Ooh,
be a lot of fun in
that is
July.
awesome. So I actually just moved from San Diego a year ago. That's where I was.
Wow.
So I was there
Okay.
for about 2 years, and we were there for Comic Con. I didn't go because the tickets sold out so fast, but I did have some friends who
It's
volunteered there and were able to just be there for a day and then get tickets for the weekend. And let me tell
yeah.
you, have you ever been to San Diego?
I've been to San Diego. Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah, San Diego is amazing. I used to live
Yeah.
like not in Coronado, but a little bit south, like Imperial Beach. So
Okay.
it's a beautiful beach town. If you get a chance, I'd recommend going there. But yeah,
Okay.
Comic Con seems like it's awesome. The convention center is gorgeous, and you're right on the water. So if you ever need recommendations for food while you're out there, let me
For
know.
sure. Yeah.
I've only ever been to two video game conventions. They were both PAX West. I
Okay.
went in 2019 and then in 2020, and it was kind of a mix and match. It's like sort of all games, right? It's penny arcade, so you get everything. I'm actually I just bought two tickets for Friday's PAX Unplugged. So we just got our round trip flight tickets. My wife and I are gonna fly up Friday morning and fly back Friday night, so we can just have somebody watch the kids for the day, and we're just gonna go and
Uh,
have a blast out there because it's
yeah.
primarily cards and board games. So I love it, man. I don't know if you had as much of a good time in Austin as I had in Seattle when I went to PAX West, but that it was peak fun for me in terms of the video
Yeah.
game world. I loved every
No, it
second of
was.
that.
Yeah. That's actually, so I have never had a Sega Saturn before. And so I was debating it. I was like, maybe I will. Maybe. And they were having a sale. So I was like, I'm just going to get a Sega Saturn. So I actually ended up getting a Sega Saturn when I went to that convention. Got a couple games as well. So it was a good experience for sure.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I did also want to touch on, we were talking about stores and things and places we go. One of the things I dislike as being a collector, and maybe you agree with me, is when they put the price tag on the game. As a collector, it's just sometimes very hard to get off, and you clean it. I've developed some ways to do it, but
Yeah, and
it's a
then
struggle.
everybody can view how badly I got ripped off too. Like it's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
double-edged sword. And I've had a hard time getting some of these off. I mean, you can see, like, I have a Christmas gift here from my neighbor, right?
yeah.
And it's like I'm gonna have to sit there and meticulously pick that off with my fingernail and get
Now
acetone and like Q-tips, and it's like I don't want to do that.
is that game sealed or no?
No,
That's
I
a
don't have any seal. The only seal game
Okay.
I have is the SOCOM game for
Yeah.
now. I'm possibly gonna be coming into some, like, we'll see what happens.
So Gugon, works very well for that. I've had a lot
I
of
have heard
success
that.
just put a little bit on with a Q-tip, let it sit, and then it should peel right up. If not, put a little bit more on. So very successful with that. And then, marker, the hydrogen peroxide works if there's marker on like a cartridge or something. You don't want to scrub it too hard. Because if you look closely at like an N64 game, or sorry, a Super Nintendo game, there's like little dimples like in the plastic, so it's not completely flat. What you can do is you can kind of ruin some of those dimples if you scrub it too hard.
Yeah. So how do you feel about case swapping? Because now we're on the topic of maybe somebody puts a tag on the top right corner, like I just showed you. It damages the case enough to where it kind of like gets you bothered, It kind of like gets those wheels spinning in your head, and you're like, that's not quite right. Because I know some people, they'll take the case art out and they'll swap it with a new case, but it isn't exactly complete in box,
Yeah,
right? It's like because with PS2 games, right, there was different gens. I'm sure you're aware. So
yeah.
there's like the cases that just have the PS2, the PlayStation logo. There's cases that have the memory card holder, and you can get into the weeds about it. What's your take on that?
No one's ever asked me that. I think that if it matches the original, I think that's fair. But if you're going from, a case that should have a memory card holder in it to one that doesn't, I think that's a little dubious.
And that is where I think you kind of get into the gray area of stores for the most part. If you go into a store, you're taking it at face value that they're not going to rip you off. At least I am.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so sometimes, because there's what 2,200 plus or something titles for the PS2 in the US alone, not even considering like other
yeah. There's a
regions.
lot.
So it's impossible for me to know exactly what version of this cover art goes with this box, goes with this disc. Like I would have to sit there and pull out my phone and do a bunch of nonsense. So
Yeah,
sometimes I'll come into something and then I'll have it for a while and then I'll trade it to somebody for a game that I want to play or just something I want to add to my collection and it doesn't match up. And they're like, why is this? And I'm like, I couldn't tell you. Because it's not something that I think about. So it's interesting to get your opinion on that. I mean, I'm in agreement with you fully, but sometimes it can be kind of weird, you
and
know?
that's I'm a complete in box collector too. So for anything that has a disc, I want the full box and the manual. I don't want just a disc. I want the full thing. Cartridges, I don't really do that. So N64, Super Nintendo, NES, like I'm just looking at my collection over here. It's just all cartridges. Dreamcast is complete in box. Sega Genesis complete in box. and then anything with a disc. So that's pretty much how I roll with my collection.
So if you have like a price tag on the actual paper or the cardboard of a game, does that deter you from purchasing it?
It
Because that's
does,
something
yeah.
I've never thought about that because all
It
the stuff
does,
that I have has the plastic like sleeve.
yeah. Yeah, it does. So I've wanted to buy some NES games that were complete in box or maybe sealed, and there was a sticker on them, and I was like, I don't know. That's gonna be so much work to get it off, and it's just not gonna look right. And it's gonna lose value. So I was like, no thanks.
Yeah, because that kind of gets into the sealed category too. Because if it's sealed, that is very tricky material to
Some people will
clean.
say, just leave it on there because it's sealed. It's part of the history of the game. So,
Because
I
that's
don't know.
something I'm gonna have to take into account probably tomorrow when I see these games is like if there are sticker like let's say there's a yard sale sticker on it or something right from like
Yeah,
20 years ago.
yeah,
Like I don't know how long has that been there? Is it like actually become one with the game
yeah.
itself at this point? Like I don't want to damage it. So
And I've
it's
I've
interesting.
taken enough stickers off where I can kind of look at it and say, I think this will be easy to get off, or that's going to be impossible to get off. Like if the sticker is right on the label of the game, like a cartridge game, like N64, you know how they have the cartridge on the front and the label there. If the sticker's right there, that's not coming off. That's going to take some of the
Always
cover
going to
art
take some of
off.
that paper
Yeah,
off
yeah.
100%. So do you do much stuff with repairs? Let's say you get a completed box game and you just want to play it and you're playing it, and let's say there's some issue with the cart or with the console itself. Do you know much about repairing? Because I know with some of the older games prior to actually having those optical drives where it's actually using the lasers to read the game files, I've heard that the repair process is pretty straightforward, but I've never done it myself. I'm actually about to open up my 360 and give it a deep clean, redo the paste, add an aftermarket cooler, and do all this stuff, but I don't know
Yeah.
much about pre PS2, and I know that's a whole different ballgame.
So yeah, I personally don't, especially when it comes to consoles. For discs and just rebuffing discs, I have a rebuffer for that, and to get those fixed. Cartridges, I've like I said, I clean those up. If they don't work, I don't really have any. I'm not an electrical engineer or anything, so I don't have any. If I
Yet,
open it up, it's all
you're
going to be
not an
yeah.
electrical engineer yet. You may be.
I'd love to learn, but it's something that I feel like I'd make worse. But, there's a lot of people that I've met online who do it, and you can send it to them and they'll take care of it. So it's what's great about the community is you meet people who have knowledge in something you don't, and then they're able to help you with that.
Yeah, it definitely feels like this community is incredibly welcoming, which I love.
Yeah.
I know there's been some communities for gaming in the past that I've been a part of where it's very elitist, or it can feel like it. And until you kind of show that you are committed, then they don't take you seriously.
Wow.
The retro gaming collecting world has been awesome because I'll walk
Yeah.
into a store, into a board game place, and everybody's like, come over here, like I'm so and so, let me show you what I'm working on, let me show you what I have. And it's always super nice. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, this is a testament to that, like we met via Instagram
Right. Right.
and we're having a great conversation about this. And that's something that I don't think that I could do. It also helps that a lot of us as collectors from this era are now just coming into our adulthood. We're having that disposable income, we're having that stability where we
Right.
can actually reflect back on our nostalgia and collect that for ourselves. So I feel like it's more of a we're all in this together type community,
Yeah.
which is so refreshing.
So every collector talks about their holy grail, the one thing that they would do anything to obtain. So what is yours?
Right now it's Diablo 1 for the PS1.
Okay. Just a regular old copy, like just that
Just
you can play.
a sealed one would be my grail for sure.
Okay.
Like I
Okay.
might get that graded if I ever come across one.
Yeah, yeah.
But also completely unrelated to consoles, maybe anything World of Warcraft collector related sealed, and I'm looking at one that I may try and get tomorrow, but it is that those are pricey. I mean, I think just
Yeah.
complete in box for the World of Warcraft collector edition it goes for like 350. So, I mean, that would be a pretty significant investment for me to make just to have on my
Right.
mantle, but it's something that I grew up with. Those are the two games that I primarily grew up playing because my history is sort of I got the N64 in 1999. It was Christmas Day. It was the best day of my life. I got the PS2, I got the Xbox 360, and then all of a sudden everything stopped for consoles for me. So I went all heavy into PC. So that's why you
Okay.
see me only really collecting PS2 and Xbox 360 because that's a bulk of my childhood memories.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So those are my two grails. Possibly Pokemon Crystal, but that's also one that is like a long term thing because those can be pretty
For
hard to
sure.
find and also pretty pricey right now, especially with the craze of Pokemon over the last few years. What about you? What's your grill?
Well, it was the Siphon Filter 3. That for the longest
Okay,
time, like
all
that's what
right.
I wanted. I was like, this is so cool, like a piece of history. So now they have that. The next thing that I'm kind of working towards or want to achieve getting is there's a competition cartridge for Super Nintendo of Donkey Kong. So it
Yes,
was
I've heard of this.
yeah, yeah. So that this thing goes for like $7,500 online. So that's a long ways away, but that's definitely something. If I had that in my collection, I'd be ecstatic.
Well, yeah, I mean, just the loose itself, it looks like
Yeah,
it's at
yeah,
4,300, and then the
yeah.
complete. Yeah, so you're looking at new though. You want it sealed. So what's weird to me
Well, no,
is,
I would be okay with just a cartridge. I don't need it
well, you know
sealed.
what's really
Yeah.
strange? This is what doesn't make any sense to me. So there was a complete in box sale of this for 10 grand this year, but now there's a sealed one for 6,500 that was sold this month. So, and then the graded price is 7,100. So it's like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to me. You know
Well,
what I
when they're
mean?
so rare and there's not a lot of that game around, it's hard to really get a good price. So what do you use for looking up prices? What are you looking on?
I primarily use price charting if I'm on my
Okay.
laptop. I just use price chart, but I do have like the Game Eye app, so I can scan the barcodes of all of my games and have an easy assessment of my collection. And it allows me to sort it by like near mint, like heavily played, just the condition of it, and add some notes. And it also will tell me what the loose price is, the complete in box, and the sealed. So that, and it'll pull from eBay, Mercari, Depop, like wherever, Facebook if it can. I don't think it pulls from Facebook, but it tries to get the most accurate, lowest price. So that way, when I'm going into a trade, I can give a transparent price. Like, hey, yeah, this is like heavily played, but currently the loose is maybe $10. So we'll just go with the loose price, for instance. So that's what I use. What do you normally use?
Price charting. So price charting actually does have an app as well. So I just use price charting app on my phone.
I did not know they had that.
Yeah, it's how I store my collection. If I'm out shopping in a store somewhere, I'll pull it up and look up the game and see what it's sold for recently. So
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. I know a lot of people use like Game Eye or price charting. Those are the main two that I've heard of,
Mm-hmm.
but they're pretty helpful.
Yeah, and
So
there's also some great apps, I'm sure, that are out there that I haven't heard about. I've mainly
yeah,
gotten these as like word of mouth solutions because, like I said earlier, like the community is so welcoming. They're willing to show you these tools rather than kind
yep,
of
yeah,
hide it and pull the rug over you, so to speak.
yeah,
Not so much in the trading card game world
Hmm.
because I think a lot of people are definitely in it just for the cash grab, so it can be a little
Sure,
tricky.
sure.
But yeah, I mean, the apps are good. Price charting is good, but at the end of the day, it's about what we want to play and what we want to collect and how bad we want it.
Yeah,
Because sometimes there's stuff you're just not going to find.
yeah. Speaking of, what we want to collect, what we want to play, what would you say is your favorite game of all time? Would it be Diablo? I guess.
That's a hard one. I guess it depends
Yeah,
on the time of my life because it
yeah,
changes. So
yeah.
for a time, it was Tony Hawk Pro Skater for the N64.
Okay.
For a time, it was Skate 3 for the 360. For a time, it was World of Warcraft,
So what about right now?
Diablo.
If
Now, if I
yeah,
had to play a game today, what would it be? It's got to
or if
be
I said,
It's got to
what
be
if?
Guitar Hero 3 or Super Smash Brothers Melee. It's one of the
Okay,
two.
okay,
So those two, and so I don't collect GameCube. The only game I play on GameCube is Super Smash Brothers Melee, and I've been a diehard fan. I love the tournament scene. I love everything about it. So I have a Wii, and I've been looking for a copy of Melee just casually, but
yeah.
it's so hard to find one, to be honest. I know you can get it on an SD card and you can boot it up, but I just want that physical media. Like that's what I
I
want.
agree. Yeah, that's another thing to touch on is people, people stream or they collect or they play on emulators,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
just with ROMs. And to me, it's just not the same as having the physical copy of that game that you can pick up, play, open the
No.
case, read the manual. So it's so much, you know,
It's
better to have
really
the
it's
actual
it,
game.
It's really not the same. I was just speaking with somebody about modding PS2s to do the open modification where you can get access to all the titles, and he was telling me like, yeah, like I could boot up and play Kuan right now on PS2, but it's not the same as when I had it in 2003,
Right.
or whatever year it was. It's like he's like, I want that media. I want it to feel like I'm walking into my game room and it's the mid
Yeah.
2000s or
Yeah.
the early 2000s or whatever time period is for you that brings you joy. So I agree. I thought about modding my PS2. I decided not to because I exactly your point. Like I'd much rather have the feel. I'd much rather have it in hand. And then also I want to share that with my family. Like my girls are going to grow up and I want them to have that experience of, scrubbing the back of a disc to make sure that it's going to get
Yeah.
red or blowing in the cartridge even though it doesn't do anything. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Like
Right.
little things. I do have a Steam Deck that I have emulators on for games that I really want to play that I can't find. So like I don't have a copy of Skate 3 right now on the 360. So I have it on my Steam Deck as an emulator and I think that's fine. As long as you're not, you know, as long as you're not advertising, in my opinion, that you're like a collector with absolutely no games, I think it's fine. And I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
of course, you can say you're a collector anyway. Like, it doesn't matter, right? But to me, a video game collector is somebody who buys games, physical media, and wants to preserve it and enjoy it. And that's what I'm all about. I don't know if you
Yeah.
feel the same way.
No, no, I think that makes sense. I actually had an Xbox that was modded probably, 5 or 6 years ago, and I could play any Super Nintendo, NES, get whatever I wanted on it. And I feel like I play those games more now since I actually have the physical copies of them. So just to have a modded Xbox was kind of like, pointless to me. I didn't really play it. And they
It
sell
doesn't
like
scratch
those,
the itch. It doesn't
yeah,
scratch
yeah.
that itch.
Yeah, and they sell those things where they have 16,000 games from every system. And I've thought about like, oh, it'd be cool to have one of those. But like, I would never play it. There's something about picking up a cartridge, putting it in, like you said, blowing on it if you need to, putting it back in and just playing. So, and not being able to save, because these emulators have save states they can use. And, that was the fun of the old games was you couldn't save. You just had to play through on 3 lives. And if you didn't, you start back at the beginning.
And that's the tough part about it. Like I was playing Champions of Norath probably 6 months ago on like a Sunday morning or something. I had my little girl in the chest carrier and I'm playing it and then the game freezes and I'm like, when was my last save point? And it was like an hour and a half prior. And my wife wakes up and I'm like sweating on the couch, like trying to get back to this point that I was at. I was like, I've wasted so much time. But it was frustrating in the moment, but that's exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
frustrating,
that's
but
what
yeah.
makes gaming rewarding is because you know that at any moment your power could flicker and you got to start over. You know what I mean? Like, of course,
Oh yeah.
you wouldn't want that to happen to anybody, and
Yeah.
you wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy. But it's just those little nuances that make it more fun, I think. So I actually want to ask you now: how did you get into gaming? What was your start? First off, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
37.
37. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
30. So
Okay.
you're a little bit ahead of me. So you probably
Yeah.
graduated in '05.
6, yeah.
Oh six. Okay. So what was your start to gaming? How did it all begin for you?
So I had a brother who was 4 years older than me, and there's somewhere my mom still has a video of this, but I don't know when. I think I was maybe 5 or 6. I'm trying to think because my brother was like 9 or 10, and we got our first Nintendo. And there's a video of us like unwrapping it and going just crazy, like, "Oh my god, a Nintendo!" Like saying words that 5 and 6 year olds shouldn't say. But
Of course.
and then, so I think a lot of my gaming, came from my brother because he was older than me, so he started before I did, and so he would play and we would play against each other. I think the first console that I really said like, "Hey, I want one," or "This is my favorite console," was PlayStation. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I got a PlayStation one year for my birthday. The game I got was, I think it was Batman and Robin was the game. It was terrible. It was a terrible game,
Of course
but
it
it
was.
was, but it was, it was the first game I had. So that, and then from then on, I was like, man, this is fun. So I think I had every system from PlayStation onward that ever came out, like Sony and Nintendo, whatever they came out with. I waited in line for the midnight release of the Xbox when it first came out at the mall.
What's
That
up with
one,
that? Malls. That's what we need. I remember growing up in a mall because there was a PC LAN center near my house. And so my
okay.
parents would drop me off at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and they'd pick me up at 10. And I met all my friends there. I think I
Yeah.
met my first girlfriend there. I had such a good time, but now that doesn't exist.
Doesn't.
So anyway, back
Doesn't.
to your waiting in line for the Xbox at the mall.
Well, it doesn't because we have all digital media, right? So everything's online. There's a kind of like we were talking about having the physical games. I made a comment on someone's post the other day that they were, this is what it was like going home looking at an instruction booklet or the game case. And I'm like, well, kids these days don't even get to experience that because you just go online, you click a button, and you have the game. There's no instruction manual, there's no box art. So it's really, really changed. And especially even with multiplayer gaming, that I think we have, single player gaming was where it first started. Then they got multiplayer gaming that came out, and that really changed the game. I stayed up till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., like on school nights when I was in high school, much to the chagrin of my parents all the time. I had a big surround sound system in my bedroom, and it was right next to my parents' bedroom, so it was a little too loud. But now we've got digital media, so no one buys, physical copies of games anymore. So who knows what the next, 20, 30 years in gaming, I guess VR maybe will be the next.
Yeah, that is interesting. VR is something that I've been thinking about a lot. I played a little bit, and don't get me wrong, it is awesome. I just don't think it's there yet, and I think plenty of
Yeah.
people have already exhausted that topic, and there is a consensus that we're getting there, but we're not there yet. But there is something to say about that idea that, I mean, kids these days, I say that, I can't believe that phrase came out of
Yeah,
my
right,
mouth
right,
because
yeah.
that was me when I was, 15. My parents would say kids these days, and I'm sitting there playing World of Warcraft until 2 in the morning,
Yep.
right? But it's true. Like a lot of the younger generation right now, they don't even know how to type with home row on the keyboard,
Yeah.
and it's like I feel like we've gotten away from not only like that physical, like tactile skill that you develop by working with your hands and using consoles and using keyboards, but we've also gotten away from the social element a little bit where
Yeah.
I think I want to bring that back. That'd be really nice because it was nice to go over to your friend's house on a summer afternoon and because he had that new PS3 game or whatever
Yeah.
that console is for you, and you just play like, for instance, I played Fear on PS3
Hmm.
with the lights off in my neighbor's room. We're just freaking out, but now kids can just boot up Discord and just play it at home, and
Yeah.
there isn't that element of. I mean, maybe there is. Don't get me wrong. I still talk to a lot of the guys that I played PC games with, like World of Warcraft and League of Legends and so on. H1Z1 stuff like that. I still talk to them to this day, and I met them in person. It's just it's that moment in time that I wish we could capture once again because
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt the same way, but I don't know if you grew up in a neighborhood where you could like go knock on somebody's door and enjoy some, Super Nintendo with them, but that
We
was
would trade. We would trade games, right? So,
yeah.
guy down the street would have, this game that I want to play. I have this one. We trade it for a week. We trade back, and that again, that can't happen with digital media. So, yeah,
No, it really
certainly.
can. I think that's what I love so much about board games, at least right now, is
Yeah.
it's still pretty topical. It's still pretty popular. I think it's getting a pretty good resurgence right now. And I actually was just over at a friend's house today. We were doing some yard work building his back deck, and I was planning on playing some board games with him. And, we had all of our kids together, we were hanging out, and we didn't have time. But at the end of the day, he was like, oh, I really wanted to play that Catan Junior copy with my kids. And I was like, dude, I'll leave it with you. You play it, let me know how you like it, and next time I'll take one of your games. And it's
Yeah.
basically exactly what you're talking about. And I think that gives you the warm and fuzzy inside, where you're like, I'm doing something nice, and they're having a good time with my stuff. And you know that you're going to get it back and try something new of theirs.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you could buy somebody a gift on Steam right now, and they'll play it maybe, or it'll just go into their backlog of
You'll never know, right?
967.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll
Like
never
I know
know.
I have about 200 games in my Steam that I'm never gonna play. I just know I'm never going to. Like I opened up Baldur's Gate and played for an hour and a half and realized that I have children and it's just not possible really right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just as a small example, but you know, I don't know. What's your take on that?
I mean, yeah, the same as you. I miss the day. Well, I guess I don't miss the days because I'm not a kid anymore. But I wish kids could experience the physical media age and going out and going to friends' houses, like you said, hooking up six Xboxes together with Ethernet cords and
Yeah.
playing Halo. Like, yeah, those were the days.
Or just sneaking down or sneaking out of your room and turning on the TV in the middle of the night and dropping the volume all the way down to zero so you can just get that one more level or get that one
Yeah,
more unlock or something, you
yeah.
know?
Now it's funny
Such
you,
good
you talk about
memories.
that. So I would, when multiplayer gaming first started, that was the Xbox was the first real multiplayer, console that I had, and so I'd be playing online. But I don't know if it was the same for you, but I don't think my parents understood you couldn't pause, right? So, mom would say, "It's time for dinner, pause the game." I'm like, "Mom, I can't." And she just didn't get that. So,
I was really big into raiding in World of Warcraft, like the PvE content.
uh,
So that was my whole focus in life at the time. I thought it was gonna, it was the most important thing. It was my life's work at the time.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
14 or 15 just in
yeah.
my living
RuneScape
room
for me.
playing
That was RuneScape
RuneScape.
for me.
Sure, old
Yeah,
school
yeah,
RuneScape.
yeah.
You're just chopping trees and mining and you're like getting runes and you're like, I need to 99 this skill. And it's like,
For what,
okay,
right?
but
Like,
yeah, for what?
yeah,
Of
yeah.
course, I still have friends who play old school RuneScape to this day and are still farming for who knows why. It
They're
doesn't
still
matter
working
why.
towards 99
As long
smithing, right?
as the dopamine is hitting, it doesn't matter. So yeah, they never understood, and they do now. I think it's something that has evolved with time. People understand like a lot of our world is moving to digital, so yeah, you can't pause, right?
Yeah,
I get it, but to some degree that idea has been lost, right? Like,
yeah,
because it's, okay, every game is 10 to 15 minutes now, and then you can just walk away. Whereas
yeah,
before, it was like, no, like, this is an hour and a half long game of Command and Conquer. I can't pause. Like, I'm gonna
right,
lose. Like,
right.
I have to stick it out. Or this is a raid boss where, oh, it's time for dinner. No, there is no dinner right now. Like, dinner is the loot that I'm gonna get from this boss
Yeah,
in like Wailing Caverns or whatever, you know. So I don't
yeah.
know.
So we're coming up on, let's see, we've been recording for about 50 minutes. I do have a few more questions just to
Sure.
get through if you want to talk about a couple things. So we talked about your favorite game. What about console wise? What would be your favorite console if, gun to your head, I'm going to take all your consoles but one, which one are you keeping?
It's PS2 for sure.
PS2, just
It
because of
has to be.
the abundance of games or
It's the abundance of games, and every time I go into a store, I learn something about PS2 that I wouldn't know otherwise. Like, it's impossible for me. Well, no, I wouldn't say it's impossible for me to know every title, but there's always something new to experience with an old system with PS2. Whereas with what, N64, there's how many, 260 something titles?
I think that's about right. Yeah. Sounds
And
about right.
with PS2, it's like I may be 55 years old and I may see a game I've never heard of before, unless I go and study the list and know what I have. Sure, I think there's only one confirmed full collection of PS2 in the US at least, and it was
Okay.
posted on Reddit within the last 2 years, and that was a massive deal.
I'm sure.
So, but for you, what would you say yours would be?
You're going to hate me. I'm going to say Nintendo 64. I mean,
Dude, I mean,
you've
that is
got
fine.
four player, right? You've got all the fun four player games. You've got GoldenEye, you've got Perfect Dark, you've got like Mario Party. That
Mario
was the
Party.
first. Yeah. So I
Mario
think,
Kart, Mario Tennis, Tony Hawk. You've got so many awesome titles. Pokemon Snap, even. I loved
yeah.
Pokemon Snap. And I don't think there's anything wrong with N64. It was a loaded question. You got me with
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. There you
But
go.
yes.
But it just when I play, I enjoy playing single player games. Don't get me wrong, but I've always loved multiplayer and playing with other people, whether that's cooperatively or versus or whatnot. And even many times I lose, but hey, it's fun. So that's the fun part for me. So how do you display your collection? Do you have certain like shelves that you've purchased to put your games up in, or what's your? A lot of people have specifics on that.
I'm in the process of acquiring
Working
some
on it.
glass shelf display
Yeah.
cases. For now, I've got the old fashioned under the TV entertainment center just stuffed away so my wife doesn't get upset with me and so my kids
There you
don't
go.
destroy the games. It's
There you
mainly
go.
a game of how quickly can my toddler find a way to break something that I love. That is currently my life.
Okay.
So right now, they're all in cardboard boxes or tucked away under the TV until we can get something that is a little bit more clean. And so,
Gotcha.
what about you? How do you display yours?
So I have some shelves that I got off Amazon. They're actually full. I need to get another one because I have a bunch of eBay packages coming. But I mean, they do a good job. I put all my cartridge games that we talked about in little plastic sleeves, so they're not just open to the air. I
That's
do have
nice.
plastic sleeves, yeah. And then obviously all my disc games are in their cases and everything. And then my graded and sealed stuff, I have a separate glass case that I have in a different room that actually has a lock on it. So if God forbid I ever get robbed, they'll have to break open that to get those out.
That's interesting. That's something I need to invest in for sure. I've thought about that a lot. Where I leave the house, I make sure I double and triple check the locks because I'm like, it's not like it's super valuable. It's that it's like
Yeah,
it means a lot to me.
yeah.
And I don't know if somebody would take that, but God forbid
Right.
that ever happens.
Well, it's funny because yeah, my wife she was like, if you're posting all these games online, are we going to be at risk for getting robbed now? And I'm like, I don't think so. Like, no one knows where I live.
I
Like, they don't.
highly
Yeah,
doubt it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So your
Don't
wife
dox
is
yourself. But
yeah, right. Your wife is not into games as well, or she is?
so she grew up playing the Super Nintendo and Genesis
Okay.
actually, which is funny because she's a few years younger than me, but she has an older brother who is around our age who was absolutely showered in video games growing up. And so she sort of experienced that secondhand and got to enjoy that through childhood, but that pretty much stopped her on Nintendo 64. I think she had a little bit of experience with PS1. So it's interesting. Her experience growing up is very similar to yours in that everything up to PS1, that's what gives you those happy memories. But for me, it's everything from PS1 forward. So we sort of have like this whole like holistic approach to where it's like, hey, if that is cool, we'll get it. We don't care what console it is. We don't even care if we have the console yet. Let's just get it because it brings us, brings us joy. And she's very supportive. She's been awesome. She feeds my addiction a little bit, but she also keeps me in check because I don't want to go too far. But what about your wife? Is she also a
No,
collector?
no, she is not. No, she is not. But she puts up with it. Thank God. But she'll say, "Oh, there's 7 more eBay packages arriving today. Wonder what those could be." So
Well, so
it's
the agreement is every time I get a game, she gets an article of clothing. So that's where we're at right now. So
okay.
now it's
Well,
like, hey,
that's
you've gotten a lot of games. I think it's time for me to go to Target. And I'm like,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
fair.
That's fair.
I can live with that.
Yeah, that's what we'll. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
What's so the purpose of this podcast is to bring people together, video game collectors, meet new people, share ideas and stuff. So I guess the one main question, what do you have any advice for people who want to get into collecting? Maybe they haven't started yet, or maybe they are started and they're just having a hard time, navigating what's out there. What advice do you have?
Sure. What I would say is don't be bogged down by the idea that video games are for children if you're an adult. Okay?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's way more people than you know who are interested in this and have good memories as children, when they were kids. So I could strike up a conversation with anybody, and I can almost promise you, if they're around our age, they've had a great time playing a game system. So go all in, have a good time. Don't break the bank. Obviously, I don't know your financial situation, but have a good time with it. Pick up something that you enjoy, and then who knows, maybe you'll go down a rabbit hole like me of getting a bunch of wild, obscure titles that just sound kind of interesting. Definitely meet people, go to old game stores, go to retro stuff, go to even board game and trading card stores, and just strike up conversations and don't feel like you need to have inhibition because so far that's paid dividends for me for sure.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think the other thing I would add is don't feel like you have to purchase a certain game. So I think a lot of times people see a game and they're like, oh, it's a collector's item. But if you have no interest in it, you're not going to play it, like, don't buy it. Buy what you are interested in and what you want to play. And that's, like I said, that's kind of what I try to do. I try to, every once in a while, I'll see a game and I've never heard of it. And I'm like, looks interesting. I'll try it out. Or someone will recommend a game to me because I do stream and I take recommendations for my stream. So, I bought 3 or 4 games in the past couple weeks because of that. So, but
Yeah,
don't feel like
yeah.
you're obligated to have certain games in your collection.
Absolutely. There's no reason, for instance, if you're getting in a PS2 collection, don't feel obligated to buy Kuan or Fatal Frame or Xenosaga 3 or something like that. Like, it's not mandatory, right?
Yeah.
Like, of course it'd be nice to find at a yard sale, but also I would say don't get so far into the weeds that it takes you away from the whole point of collecting games, which to me is playing them and enjoying them.
Fatal Frame is a good example. So someone recommended it to me. They said, "Hey, you like Resident Evil? I think you'd like Fatal Frame." I just, finished streaming that. I beat it, and I actually went on eBay and bought Fatal Frame 2 and Fatal Frame 3 so that I could play those
Love
next. So I was
that.
like,
Well, so that's an interesting case because you like that series, you like that style of game, that genre. So it makes sense for you, but it doesn't make sense for Johnny who just got into video game collecting and his wife isn't sure about it and he buys a $700 sealed game and then she's like, what are we doing here?
right, absolutely.
So take it slow, take it at your own pace. If your pace is I have $100,000 of disposable income and I want to buy the entire N64 collection sealed, yay, more power to you. But that's not everybody.
I think it's 10,000. I actually have it on eBay in my watch list. Someone is selling the entire N64 collection. I think it's going for, let me check right now. I think it was 10,000.
Hey,
that
well,
sounds
that's
about
probably
right.
that might go up. We'll see.
Yeah, it's
I
going
just pulled
for
a number. I just pulled a number out of thin air. To be honest with you, that'd be hilarious.
$10,500 plus $16 shipping.
Call me Rain Man. That's crazy.
It says there's 296 games. So we were talking earlier.
296. I thought it was
yeah.
260, 296.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah. So
wow, that is unbelievable to me. Offloading a whole N64.
That I could never do. I could never buy. I could never purchase that. I could never purchase that. The reason being is I would feel that some of those games might be reproductions, and I would not want to purchase. And I'd feel bad for saying, "Hey, can you open up each cartridge and show me the board for all these?" And I would not want to do that to that person.
It would take too long too.
Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, no, it's been a great conversation. I appreciate you joining me today. You can follow Ryan on Instagram at wavecapspaper. Any other social media you have? I think that's the only one I know of.
No, that's pretty much it. We have our website that's
Website?
attached to our Instagram, but it's the same, wavecapspaper.com. It's like I said, we're transitioning away from posters. It'll primarily be used as a landing page until we start doing some buy-sell trades of video games and cards and stuff. But for the time being, my Instagram is a great place to get a hold of me if you want to have a conversation.
Make sure you follow wavecapspaper. Make sure you follow Dr. Gamer Retro on Instagram, on Twitch, and YouTube as well. And if anyone is interested in being on the podcast, just shoot me a message on any of those social medias, and we'll work it out. But all right, thanks for coming, and have a great day, everybody.
Take care. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem.